Hi, I'm Arabella, a storyteller on YouTube. This story is inspired by real relationship confessions and has been fictionalized for storytelling purposes. Names, details, and events have been changed. If this story moves you, or if you see a part of yourself in it, please like the video and subscribe to support my channel. Now, let's begin. The lockbox was hanging from my mother's porch rail when I pulled into the driveway. For 1 second, I told myself the realtor had the wrong address. Then I saw strangers walking through the lake house I had spent 11 months restoring for my parents. I had given them the keys 12 days earlier. My mother cried when she saw the kitchen. My father stood on the deck like he couldn't believe the view was his. And now someone was measuring the living room with their eyes like they were deciding where to put a couch. I didn't buy that lake house because it was profitable. I bought it because my parents had spent most of their lives making do with places that always felt temporary. Apartments with thin walls, rentals with broken blinds, houses that belonged to banks, landlords, or luck, but never really to them. When my company finally had a year that changed everything for me, I went looking for one thing: not an investment, not a weekend property, not something to flip. I wanted a place that felt settled, a place with still water in the morning, a long kitchen table at night, and enough quiet around it that my mother could sit on the back porch and hear herself think. The house I found was tired in the way old houses get when they have been ignored for too long. The bones were good. The windows faced the lake. The dock needed work. The roof needed work. The floors needed work. Almost everything needed work. But I could see what it would become before anybody else could. I could see my father standing by the grill in the summer. I could see my mother learning the light switches, filling the pantry, me setting a ceramic bowl by the sink the way she always did in every place we had ever lived. So I bought it, and then I spent months turning that picture into something real. I rebuilt the kitchen around the way my mother cooks. I widened the walkway because my father's hip had been getting worse, and he never admitted pain until he was already limping. I had the old back steps replaced with wide cedar ones because my mother hates narrow stairs. I added a bench under the front window because she always sits while putting on her shoes. I redid the guest room in soft green because she once said, "Green made a room feel forgiving." I changed the bathroom tile because my father slipped on cheap tile once when I was in college, and I never forgot the sound of that fall over the phone. Every room carried them in some form, not because I am sentimental in a reckless way, because I pay attention. That is what I had always been in that family. The one who noticed what people said under their words. The one who remembered who hated cold floors, who liked deeper drawers, who cut tomatoes with a dull knife because no one ever replaced the good one. There is a price to being the reliable child. People stop seeing what you give as a gift. They start seeing it as your setting, the background feature of your personality. Of course she handled it. Of course she paid for it. Of course she'll understand. Of course she can absorb one more thing. People tell themselves those stories because it lets them keep taking without feeling like thieves. When I gave my parents the keys, my mother shook so hard she had to set the box down on the counter. She cried into both hands and then laughed because she was embarrassed to be crying so much in front of other people. My father walked through the place slowly, opening drawers, checking the porch latches, looking out toward the dock like he was trying to memorize that water all at once. He hugged me once, quick and hard. For him, that was an entire speech. My mother kept saying, "I don't know what to say, I don't know what to say." And I remember thinking that maybe this was one of those rare moments when love landed exactly where I meant it to. I handed them a folder that night too. It had the deed summary, the occupancy terms, the structure my attorney had set up, everything neat and labeled. My mother set it aside because the dinner was still warm. My father tapped it once and said he trusted me. And then my sister Lana took pictures by the fireplace. Then dessert happened. Then people started talking over each other. Then the moment turned into a family memory before anyone opened a single page. That was the thing about my family. They often treated paperwork the way they treated boundaries, as something that only mattered if it interrupted what they wanted. So when I stepped out of my car that afternoon and saw the lockbox swinging under my mother's porch light, I already knew this wasn't confusion. It wasn't a clerical issue. It wasn't bad timing. It was desire that had moved fast enough to put a code on the front door. The realtor saw me first. Mid-40s, pressed shirt, lake country loafers, the kind of smile that looks friendly from a distance and expensive up close. He was standing near the entry while a couple in clean hiking shoes drifted through the house, pretending not to stare at the family photos still on the sideboard. He lifted a hand. "Afternoon," he said. "We're almost done here." I stopped at the bottom of the steps. "What is this?" He blinked once. I pointed at the lockbox, then at the car, then past him to the strangers inside my parents' house. "What is this?" The woman near the fireplace looked away fast. The man beside her kept pretending to study crown molding he had no emotional relationship to. And then my mother stepped into the doorway. She saw my face and didn't look ashamed. She looked inconvenienced. "You should have called," she said. It was such a small sentence, but it told me everything. She didn't start with an explanation. She started with the idea that I had disrupted her plan by arriving too soon. I looked past her shoulder. There were printed flyers on the console table I had refinished with my own two hands. There was a basket by the stairs with boot covers for showings. Someone had staged my mother's throw blanket over the sofa arm like sentiment was now part of the sales pitch. "You listed the house?" I said. My father came out of the dining room then, calm in the way he always gets when he thinks calmness makes him look right. One hand in his pocket, chin set. He had used that posture my whole life whenever he wanted to make someone else seem emotional by comparison. "We were going to tell you," he said. "No, you weren't." My mother crossed her arms. "Elena, don't do this out here. We're simplifying." Simplifying. Families like mine always have soft words for hard selfishness. Simplifying, practical, temporary, best for everyone. The language changes before the behavior does. That is how people make room for themselves inside their own lie. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Lana. She didn't come down fast. She came down carefully, phone in one hand, like she had already guessed this moment might become useful later. She stopped halfway and looked from me to our parents to the realtor. "What happened?" she asked. Nothing had happened yet. That was the problem. They were still in the part where they thought they might talk over the truth before it hardened into record. My mother answered first. "The house is too much for us, and Lana needs somewhere stable for a while." There it was. Not the whole truth, but enough of it. The house I restored for my parents had already been mentally reassigned in their heads as a fund, a bridge, a rescue package, a family resource to be converted into cash and redirected toward the child who never stopped needing. "You're selling my gift to move Lana into something else," I said. My father's voice sharpened. It was a gift. Gifts belong to the people who receive them. That line might have worked on someone who hadn't been in the attorney's office. It might have worked on someone who thought keys and ownership were the same thing. It might even have worked on me 10 years earlier, before enough life taught me that love without structure turns into access for the wrong people. The realtor looked between us, smile thinning. "Is there a title issue I should know about?" "Too fast," my father said. "No." I looked at the realtor. "Did they tell you they owned this house?" Silence changed the shape of the afternoon. He didn't answer at first. He reached for professionalism, but professionalism had already started slipping off him. Real estate people understand many things can be negotiated. Ownership is not one of them. My father took a step toward him. "That won't be necessary." The realtor pulled out his phone anyway. I think it will. People always ask how someone can be greedy enough to do something like this. The answer is that greed almost never walks into a room calling itself greed. It usually introduces itself as reason. My parents weren't saying, "We want to turn your gift into cash because we think your work belongs to the family now." They were saying the house was too large. They were saying lake maintenance was too much. They were saying Lana had hit a rough patch. They were saying I had enough already. They were saying words built to sound responsible. That is how people betray you without letting themselves feel like villains. They translate appetite into duty. They rename preference as necessity. By the time the papers appear, they have told the story to themselves so many times that they almost look offended when you call it what it is. My mother looked at me like I was being unreasonable. We can't be expected to manage a place like this forever. Then why cry over it like it was forever 12 days ago? Her face tightened. Don't be cruel. Cruel. That was another family word. In our house, cruel often meant accurate at the wrong time. The realtor had the county site open by then. He entered the address, frowned, tapped again, and turned the phone slightly as if changing the angle might change the answer. It did not. He opened the property summary, then the deed image. Then he stopped smiling completely. My father saw the change first. What is it? The realtor didn't answer him. He kept reading. The couple inside the house began drifting toward the porch, with the silent urgency of people who can tell they have entered someone else's disaster. Then the realtor said, in a voice with no sales pitch left in it, "Why does this property show title under Greenwater Harbor Holdings, LLC, with life occupancy rights granted to Daniel and Marcia Hale?" My mother went still. "There must be some filing delay," she said. He shook his head. "No, ma'am, this is recorded." I could feel my own heartbeat slowing, not speeding up. That was the moment the story stopped being about whether my parents loved me enough. It became about whether they had tried to sell something they did not own. My father turned to me. "You put it in a company?" "I put the house in a structure that let you live here for life," I said. The folder explained that. My mother's eyes flicked toward the side table under the stairs where the folder still sat unopened under a stack of mail. The realtor kept reading. "Occupancy grantees hold no authority to sell, lease, assign, market, refinance, transfer, or otherwise encumber the property without written consent of the title holder." My mother's whole face changed at once. Not confusion, fury. Because this was no longer a misunderstanding she could smooth over with tone. This was a limit. A real one. A recorded one. "You gave us keys and let us believe this was ours," my father said. "I gave you the papers the same night. You should have said it plainly. You should have read what I handed you." That landed. Hard. Not because it was clever. Because it was true in front of witnesses. Lana came down the rest of the stairs then, no longer drifting around the edges. She had heard enough to understand two things at once. The house was not available to solve her life, and everyone standing there now knew it. The realtor bent to pick up one of the flyers from the console table. He read the headline and actually went pale. "Luxury lakefront home, offered free and clear." He looked up at my father. "You represented this as unencumbered." My father said nothing. That silence did more damage than denial would have. The realtor stepped away from us and made a call to his office on speaker. He gave the address, the listing number, and one sentence that altered the whole balance of the day. "Pull the listing now. Title is wrong." My mother moved toward him. "You can't just—" "Yes, I can," he said. And the friendliness was gone now. He told his broker to suspend the file, preserve all messages, notify anyone who had received the marketing packet, and mark the seller's authority as disputed pending review. Then he turned back. "Did either of you sign disclosure forms stating you had authority to sell this property?" My father looked at the flyers. That was enough. I need copies of everything, the realtor said. This was a misunderstanding, my mother said. No, I said. This was a listing. He checked something else on his phone. Then his expression shifted again. Worse this time. There's a draft counteroffer in the system under your name, sir, he said to my father. And it contains seller representations you were not authorized to make. My mother went white. A sign in the yard could maybe be talked around. A showing could be explained away. A family fight on a porch could be minimized. A written counter under false authority was different. That was not emotion. That was record. Nothing was final, my father said. That's not what I asked. The realtor scrolled. Offer came in yesterday afternoon. Counter was entered last night. Clear authority to convey. No title restrictions beyond standard closing conditions. I laughed once. Not because it was funny, because the distance between what they had done and what they were still pretending they had done was finally too wide to hold in one face. Then my phone rang. My attorney. I put her on speaker. Please tell me nobody signed as fee owner, she said. The realtor answered before I could. They did. She exhaled once, slow and controlled. Then her voice sharpened in the way good attorneys do when facts start arranging themselves in their favor. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, because title remains with Greenwater Harbor Holdings, any listing, offer, counteroffer, disclosure, escrow instruction, or seller representation submitted without Elena Hale's written authorization is void as to ownership and preserved as unauthorized conduct. Stop talking and start gathering copies. My mother whispered, This is insane. No, my attorney said, this is recorded. Then she asked the realtor a series of questions so cleanly it sounded almost surgical. Did they disclose the occupancy structure? No. Did they market the property as free and clear? Yes. Did they counter an offer? Yes. Was earnest money submitted? The realtor checked. Then looked up. 5,000, he said, in escrow. My father closed his eyes for half a second. I saw it. The exact moment embarrassment turned into fear. Once money touches a lie, the lie grows teeth. Preserve everything, my attorney said. No one contacts the buyer without counsel. Send me the file. The call ended, and the house went quiet in that strange way places do after the truth enters them. Wind came off the lake and pressed lightly against the screens. Somewhere upstairs, a charger buzzed against wood. The couple who had been touring the property were already backing toward their car, with the expression of people who had just watched a private family myth die in public. Inside an hour, the lockbox was gone. The listing was offline. The scheduled weekend showings were canceled. The escrow deposit was frozen pending authority review. The brokerage pulled every form my parents had signed and sent copies to my attorney before anyone had time to rewrite their own memory of events. Then came the practical part. The part I trust most, because it does not care who is crying. I changed the smart lock code first, then the side door, then the dock gate. I disabled the guest access they had set up for showings. I had the physical locks replaced the next morning. Lana stood on the gravel near her SUV while a local mover carried her garment bags and storage bins back out of the upstairs guest room. She looked offended in the way people do when consequences interrupt an arrangement they had already started living inside. My mother cried once, near the mudroom sink. Not loudly. Just enough to remind the room she knew how. My father didn't cry at all. He stood on the back deck, staring at the lake like he was trying to solve water by looking harder at it. 3 weeks later, the brokerage closed the unauthorized listing review. The buyer got the earnest money back. The compliance department marked the file as restricted. My parents signed a withdrawal acknowledgement and a non-interference agreement after my attorney made it plain that the next step would not be another family discussion. Lana moved into a furnished rental in town with a monthly rate she hated and a view of a parking lot she did not deserve enough to resent out loud in front of me. A lot of people think strength means burning the whole field down after someone betrays you. Throw them out. Cut them off. Revoke everything. Make the punishment feel equal to the humiliation. I understand that instinct more than I want to admit. There was a part of me that wanted to stand in that kitchen and say, "Get out. All of you. You mistook my love for inventory. And now you can figure out shelter without me." But mercy is not the same thing as surrender. And rage is not always the cleanest form of power. I left the occupancy rights in place, not because they deserved softness, not because I was confused about what they had tried to do, not because I wanted to look noble. I left them in place because I had promised them a home, and I refused to let their behavior decide whether I was a person who kept my word. There is a difference between breaking your own promise and tightening the terms around someone who broke your trust. They were allowed to remain. They were not allowed to control. They could live in that house. They could not leverage it. They could watch the sunrise over the lake. They could not list the dock, market the square footage, or convert my work into a rescue fund for my sister's latest collapse. That distinction mattered to me more than revenge did. People who have never dealt with family entitlement think gratitude is a stable thing. It isn't. Gratitude has a half-life. It burns bright when the gift is new. Then the mind adjusts. The extraordinary becomes normal. The miracle becomes furniture. What once made someone cry turns into what they think they have always had. And once a person starts feeling at home inside a benefit, they often slide from appreciation into assumption. In healthy families, love checks that drift. In unhealthy ones, appetite takes over where gratitude fades. That is why structure matters. Not because structure is colder than love, because structure survives the moment when love stops being enough to govern behavior. My parents had loved the view, the kitchen, the dock, the porch swing, all of it. I believe that. I also believe they loved the idea of what that house could be sold for, just a little more. Both things can be true in the same people. That is one of the ugliest lessons adulthood gives you. Someone can cry over your generosity and still imagine converting it into cash 12 days later. So no, I did not revoke the life rights. I did something harder. I made the boundary permanent. They could live inside the gift. They could never own the leverage. Every keypad code, every legal notice, every restriction, every preserved file. All of it said the same thing in different language. You may stay. You may not steer. My mother stopped saying she would treasure the house forever after that. My father never again used the sentence gifts belong to the people who receive them. Lana stopped floating trial balloons about family fairness when she realized fairness was not going to arrive in the shape of my labor. And me? I learned that a gift is not the same thing as access. Love is not the same thing as transfer. Keys are not the same thing as title. If you build something beautiful for people who have a habit of translating beauty into opportunity, the kindest thing you can do is make sure paper says what your heart hopes memory will. They got the porch, the lake, the mornings, the rooms, the quiet. I kept the deed, the authority, and the last word. Thank you for listening to this story with me. If it touched you, please don't forget to like this video and follow the channel for more stories like this. And most importantly, leave a comment below with your thoughts, how this story made you feel, and what you would have done in their place.